The critics were kind to you, in a sense, from the very first, weren't they?
Well, they were kind. Some were not. One very widely syndicated literary columnist described my book as a literary race riot.
Ralph Waldo Ellison was born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, March 1st, 1914. His father died 2 years later in a work-related accident. By 1921, his mother took them to Gary, Indiana, feeling that her children would have a better chance of reaching manhood if they grew up in the North. When she could not find a job, she moved back with them to Oklahoma. He became interested in music, moving from job to save for a trumpet. Ellison applied for admission to Tuskegee University, an all-black university in Alabama founded by Booker T. Washington. He studied music for 3 years, then moved to Harlem with hopes to study sculpture. He became friends with Richard Wright, who encouraged Ellison to start writing. Following service in World War II as a cook, he wrote Invisible Man over the course of 5 years with one off year, which he published later in 1952, and it won the National Book Award the next year. In the 8th issue of the Paris Review, spring 1955, Ellison is quoted as saying about the protagonist of his novel Invisible Man, "The hero's invisibility is not a matter of being seen, but a refusal to run the risk of his own humanity, which involves guilt. This is not an attack upon white society. It is what the hero refuses to do in each section which leads to further action. He must assert and achieve his own humanity." Hello, my name is Lucas. This is a bit of lit. I'm here to talk about Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, his only novel, unfortunately, only completed novel. If you like these sort of videos where I give a lot more context in the beginning, leave a like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, do all that good stuff. We are going to talk about an excellent novel. It is loose, it's not autobiographical in any way, but there are some elements of the protagonist's life that relate to the author's life, wherein Ralph Ellison, when he was young, went from job to job, much like we see with the main character, and also when he was even younger, Ralph Ellison's mother moved him up north, briefly at least, in hopes of a better future, because her family was black, and in the South she was worried about his health and safety and future and all these things that mothers would worry about for their children. From what I read in the Paris Review interview, spring 1955, number 8, the book is also loosely based on all different kinds of authors' works, but also Negro spirituals, because a lot of themes in these kind of spirituals is heading up north to a sort of kind of promised land, which is what the main character does. He's a young black man born in the South who is just at odds with the world. I mean, it's truly just a really great examination of race relations in America, and I'm convinced that this book is a comedy, in a dark way, in a very dark way, because the book actually starts with him underground and explaining, you know, a little bit about how he's there, and he wants to explain to you why he's there and what his situation is, and exactly how he is an invisible man. And we've already discussed that in the intro about what the real meaning behind his invisibility is, but he comes through this sort of Bildungsroman novel, through retelling his story to, and even just throughout his journey, coming to understand the source of his invisibility. So he starts off, when he starts telling the beginning of the story, he was giving a speech, and people were really impressed, but what was more important to them was sort of mocking him for the things he was saying. He sounded very intellectual, and they were just laughing about the words he was using as if he didn't understand them. And then he starts participating in this battle royale, which is really humiliating. And, you know, people are blindfolded and start pounding on each other and beating each other up, and the winner will get some great reward. He does not win, but he does get a scholarship to a college, an all-black, historically black university, or college. And he's there for a couple of years, into his junior year. There's a man, Mr. Norton, who is a trustee, a donor, these kind of things. He's there on a visit of sorts from, I believe he's actually from New York, because you see him later in New York, so he must be. Anyway, he's there, and who else but the narrator is there to chauffeur him, and he happens to go along and go through sort of old slave quarters in the area, and they meet Jim Trueblood, who is this down on his ropes father, who is also a grandfather to the children he's fathered, and this whole story makes Mr. Norton sick, and Dr. Bledsoe, who is the head of the college, is horrified and basically tells him, "You're never coming back again. I need to remove you. I'll give you some letters of recommendation," which are actually just like not recommendations at all. So he heads up north to Harlem, the spiritual element there, the influence of that anyway, in hopes of sort of trying to make his career better, in these kind of things. And he is struggling mightily, and he ends up going from 7 letters to 1, and he shows one and finds out what it really says, and he's freaking out about it. But he finds a job at a paint factory, and he has all kinds of problems at this paint factory because of the way the boss is treating him and what he's telling him and what he's not telling him. So he has to work for this other guy, Brockway, I believe his name is, work under him in the boiler room. And this guy has made it so that he can't be replaced, and that he's valuable, so he'll never lose his job. And he sees anybody coming in as a threat, especially union members, which during lunchtime, the main character happens to walk into a union meeting, and they are very suspicious of him, which I think is interesting. I'm sure there is something there, you know, given the color of his skin, given the color of the skin of the union members. This causes some real problems because the narrator tells Brockway, and Brockway is not having any of it. He ends up tricking the narrator into, at least from my understanding, tricking him into blowing up the paint factory. And he wakes up in a hospital, and this woman, Mary Rambo, who's very kind and, you know, says, like, wants to take care of him and help him, is a very motherly figure. She really believes in him, that he'll be a credit to the race, and make something of himself. And I think she's a very strong female motherly figure, so there's a symbol here with Mary. The narrator finds himself involved with the Brotherhood, which is not the Communist Party, but it really feels like it has elements of it, because they're not so concerned. Well, they are concerned with race relations in America and these kind of problems, but they sort of care about everybody, and they think that their message will help solve the race problem. They hire the narrator, and then the narrator starts meeting some other characters, and in this group, it's very interesting because you know, you sort of have to follow what the council at the top says and where they want you to be and what they want you to do, and these sort of things, and there's no questioning them, because then they're going to be upset with you, maybe change your role or dismiss you in some way. This is where he meets Clifton, who was part of the party, part of the Brotherhood. And it turns out Clifton starts to go missing, and when he goes missing around this time, the narrator is also shoved to another part of Harlem to deal with the woman question, because we need brothers and sisters. This causes... there's a whole series of problems that come from this, including later on, I believe her name is Sybil, is the wife of one of these Brotherhood members, and she wants violent relations against her from a black man. We'll leave it at that. There is a strange section that explores this idea of black men and white women together, and this odd situation. I'll talk about it a little bit more. Anyway, he also meets Roz the Exhorter, who's later Roz the Destroyer. He is a black nationalist that believes that the Brotherhood is run by white people, which seems like it is, because they constantly talk about how their skin is white. Or they don't talk about it, but the narrator mentions it. He comes into incredible conflict with him. This guy really believes in Clifton as a sort of king and really riles him up, or at least he's mocking him in some way. I think he means it, but maybe I misunderstood it. Clifton, we find out later, is actually somewhere around selling Sambo dolls, and it seems like he's really sold out, and he's, you know, discrediting the race and this kind of thing. This is a huge shock to the narrator. And then he is killed by a police officer, and the narrator, who I forgot to mention, gives speeches constantly. There's a moment very early on, which I totally forgot, where he sees a black family, elderly black family, being evicted, and he gives a rousing speech, and this is what catches the attention of the Brotherhood. He gives another speech about like what to do next now that Clifton has been killed by a police officer, and the Brotherhood does not like that, and this just causes all kinds of problems. And it really, you know, every moment in this story, he's constantly shifting. Maybe I should do what these people say, or do what these people say. He's trying to find his own identity. It's around this point where he starts to realize, like, maybe I shouldn't listen to any of these people. Maybe I should listen to my grandfather, who wanted to, you know, was a former slave and was freed. He has the idea that you should just yes them to, like, basically into submission, and this way you'll gain power. It's sort of similar, a little different to Dr. Bledsoe, who will crush anybody, no matter what race they are, to keep his power, and he's been telling white people everything they want to hear, and this is how he controls them. It's a little bit similar in a way. You just sort of act submissive so that you can get by and get what you want, or get what you can get out of this relationship between black and white people that is unavoidable. You know, let me know if I misunderstood anything. He also does realize that this is also not going to work for him, and that he needs to be himself. At this point, there's a huge race riot at the end, and Roz the Destroyer is going after everybody, and he goes after the narrator with a spear. What is he doing with a spear in the middle of Harlem? Then, you know, the narrator throws that at him. I think he gets him in the head, gets him in the face, and he hides down a hole, and then some white police officers seal him in there and let him be. And at the end, he has a little epilogue to explain that he's writing all of this to act as a way to speak for himself and start to forge his own identity and these kind of things. I want to, and hopefully inspire other people, because he's a very oratorical person and says a lot of inspiring things to people. I want to read this quote from the book, and then I will leave you at that. This is from chapter 20. I wandered down the subway stairs, seeing nothing, my mind plunging. The subway was cool, and I leaned against a pillar, hearing the roar of trains passing across on the other side, feeling the rushing roar of air. Why should a man deliberately plunge outside of history and peddle an obscenity? My mind went on abstractedly. Why should he choose to disarm himself, give up his voice, and leave the only organization offering him a chance to define himself? The platform vibrated, and I looked down. Bits of paper whirled up in the passage of air, settling quickly as a train moved past. Why had he turned away? Why had he chosen to step off the platform and fall beneath the train? Why did he choose to plunge into nothingness, into the void of faceless faces, of soundless sounds, of soundless voices lying outside history? I tried to step away and look at it from a distance of words read in books half remembered. For history records the patterns of men's lives, they say. Who slept with whom and with what results? Who fought and who won and who lived to lie about it afterwards? All things, it is said, are duly recorded, all things of importance, that is, but not quite, for actually it is only the known, the seen, the heard, and only those events that the recorder regards as important that are put down. Those lies his keepers keep their power by. But the cop would be Clifton's historian, his judge, his witness, and his executioner, and I was the only brother in the watching crowd, and I the only witness for the defense, knew neither the extent of his guilt nor the nature of his crime. Where were the historians today, and how would they put it down? That, I think, is a really great question. And definitely something worth exploring. You have all kinds of really great quotes like this about how history is written and how events are perceived, and how that kind of thing dissipates through the community. And yeah, it's a really incredible novel, talking about a lot of different things, showing a lot of different sort of symbolic images of the strong black mother, the young black man searching for his identity in this world, and this relationship, tense relationship between black men and white women, because she has certain fantasies, and he is disgusted by this because it's just another person using him for her own motives and interests, and not interested, not seeing that he is a human being, thus him being invisible. Also, of course, him being reticent to forge his own identity in a way, in other aspects. By the end, when we get to this point, he's starting to become independent in this sense, and identifying who he wants to be. But he has a long way to go. Anyway, this book is incredible. I love it. I would absolutely recommend reading it. Let me know what you think of this book, anything that you like or find really fascinating that I forgot to talk about. There is plenty, but I have gone on for a very long time. I don't know what book I will do an introduction kind of thing for next, but yeah, I hope you read Invisible Man. If you have, again, let me know what part you enjoy, and we can talk about it in the comments. Thank you. It's a great book. Goodbye.